Hello, Your Eminence. Do you remember that night? The last time we were alone? There's a consequence, one that cannot be undone. I'm carrying your child. If word gets out, our reputations, your holy vows, everything will be destroyed. You must act before it's too late, Your Eminence.
Welcome, learners, to another deep dive. Today we're plunging into a story that, well, it really gripped the Vatican. It's a story of secrecy, accusation, and ultimately a profound journey to uncover the truth. Imagine this. A quiet morning at the Vatican, the usual atmosphere. Then something appears. An unmarked envelope. No courier, no signature, just 5 chilling words to the Holy Father and cardinals.
And what's really fascinating here isn't just the mystery of how it got there, but the sheer weight of what was inside an accusation that threatened to shake the very foundations of trust within the Church, specifically targeting the vow of celibacy.
Exactly. Our mission today is to really unpack this extraordinary sequence of events. We'll go from that mysterious letter through the meticulous investigation that followed and discuss what it all means for the Church and maybe for truth itself. We're diving into the sources that brought this story to light, hoping to pull out the most important nuggets of insight for you.
Oh.
Okay, let's get into it. So that first clue, that stark white envelope, it just appeared, almost like you said, by unseen hands right there on a desk inside the Vatican. Sister Cecilia and Father Matteo found it. No stamps, no return address, nothing.
Right, and their immediate thought must have been, this isn't normal mail, this was deliberate. Someone went to great lengths to bypass the Vatican's famously tight security.
Which straight away raises that huge question, how did it even get there? The delivery itself, avoiding all official channels, it screamed that something unusual and likely malicious was going on.
Absolutely, it set the tone from the very beginning.
So Father Matteo, he doesn't hesitate. He takes it directly to Pope Leo XIV. Can you walk us through that moment, the Pope's study, his reaction, especially when he reads that sworn declaration of truth right at the start?
Well, the sources describe the Pope quietly reading scripture when Father Matteo enters. He takes the envelope, opens it, and the first thing he sees is this solemn declaration. I swear before God that every word written herein is true. It even mentions accepting consequences if proven false.
Wow, that's intense.
It is. And then the core claim hits. Cardinal Louis Antonia Teigel, a figure really beloved within the Church, had supposedly violated his vow of celibacy, secretly married, the letter claimed. It even gave disturbing details of an alleged encounter and promised photographic evidence would surface.
How did the Pope react? Anger. Disbelief.
Profound sorrow, apparently, not anger. The immediate concern wasn't just, damage control for the cardinal's reputation. It was the potential impact on the trust of the faithful worldwide. That seemed to be his primary worry.
So this incredibly serious accusation lands on his desk. What's the next step? He calls an inner council, right?
Immediately. Senior cardinals, trusted advisors, the sources paint a picture of a very tense gathering. The letter and this grainy black and white printout of the supposed photo placed right there in the middle of the big oak table.
And the immediate questions must have flown.
Oh, absolutely. Cardinal Bertol apparently asked the crucial question right away. Is this genuine? Or could it have been altered? And Archbishop Gervasi added that stark reality. Genuine or not, it will shake the Church. The accusation alone does that.
So how did the Pope steer the conversation?
With calm resolve, it seems. He said something like, this matter cannot be handled lightly, nor can we let rumor dictate our response. He announced he was forming an independent commission to investigate. We must know the truth, he insisted, and we must be just. That really set the tone. A meticulous process was needed, understanding the huge stakes involved not just for one man, but for the entire Church's credibility.
And after that meeting, the Pope apparently spent some time reflecting on Cardinal Teigel himself.
Yes. He thought about the man, not just the cardinal. His warmth, his humility, his known compassion for the poor. Teigel wasn't someone seen as grasping for power. He'd been elevated because of his genuine service.
So a real internal conflict for the Pope then, believing this man could betray his vows.
Exactly. While also acknowledging that photographs, like words, could lie. That phrase really highlights the dilemma and the absolute need for a careful, fact-based investigation.
Okay, so Pope Leo XIV moves fast to set up this independent commission. Tell us about who was chosen. Sounds like a very specific mix of people.
It was. Cardinal Giuseppe Rinaldi, a seasoned canon lawyer, he knows the Church's internal legal system. Inside out, he was made the chair. Then there was Cardinal Henri Vauban, a theologian focused on ethics. Monsignor Lucci, the chief archivist.
The internal experts, but crucially, there were external ones too.
Yes, and that was key for impartiality. Dr. Alessia Fornari, a digital forensic specialist, and Dr. Marcus Weldon, an American lawyer. This blend showed a real commitment to using rigorous, modern methods, especially with that photograph looming large. Their first job: figure out if that photo told the truth.
Right, the photo. This is where, like you said, the modern investigation techniques really come into play. What did Dr. Furnari find initially when she just, magnified the image?
Well, she spotted issues almost immediately. Distortions near the neckline, fabric folds that just didn't quite align correctly, lighting around the man's ear that seemed inconsistent with the rest of the scene.
Uh-huh. Anything else?
Yes, something quite subtle but very telling. A faint outline of what looked like a second hand, sort of ghosting in the image that didn't match the position of either person shown.
So what did Dr. Weldon, the lawyer, make of that initial assessment?
His take was immediate. This image may have been digitally manipulated. He suspected it could be two separate photos spliced together. That really ramped up the question. Is this a deliberate forgery? They knew they needed more concrete proof.
And beyond the photo, the commission started gathering other types of evidence too, didn't they?
Yes, they cast a wide net. They reviewed Vatican security footage, searched civil and church marriage records in Rome and Manila Tagle'S home archdiocese, and crucially, they started verifying Cardinal Teigel's known schedule for the period in question.
And that schedule verification turned out to be pretty important, right?
Hugely important.
Right.
Because it quickly provided a solid alibi. On the very night the letter claimed this intimate embrace happened in his office, Cardinal Teigel was actually presiding over a very public liturgy.
Where was that?
At the Basilica of St. Paul, outside the walls. And it wasn't just his word. There were witnesses, other priests, lay leaders, even journalists confirmed he was there. There was even video footage of him giving the homily at the exact time the letter alleged he was elsewhere.
So logistically impossible for the accusation to be true.
Exactly. That fact alone started to seriously unravel the core claim of the letter.
But they still needed to definitively prove the photo was faked. Dr. Fornari's advanced analysis, what else did she find?
She dug deeper and found even more damning evidence. The digital stitching was good, almost seamless, but there was a slight mismatch in the lighting gradient on the cardinal's shoulder, the woman's hand. It seemed unusually proportioned, almost like it was, as she put it, placed there from another source.
And the metadata that digital footprint images carry.
That was crucial. The metadata revealed the image was exported from Adobe Photoshop, specifically version 244.1, and it showed it was edited just 3 days before the anonymous letter arrived at the Vatican.
Wow, talk about a smoking gun.
Pretty much. And then, by separating the image channels, sort of like taking the image apart digitally, she found distinct layers. It confirmed two separate subjects, not captured at the same time. The woman's figure was surrounded by ghost pixels, artifacts left over from cutting and pasting.
And the reflection. You mentioned a reflection.
Yes, perhaps the most visually compelling proof. There's a supposed glass bookshelf behind them in the photo. When Dr. Fornari analyzed the reflection data within the image pixels, it showed only one figure reflected. The man. No woman.
Incredible. So her conclusion was?
Very clear. This image was doctored. I can say that with 95% certainty. The evidence was just overwhelming.
Okay, so with the forensic evidence pointing so strongly to a forgery, the commission then formally asked Cardinal Teigel to appear. What was his demeanor like when he faced them?
Sources say he entered with gravity, sort of quiet tiredness about him, but absolutely no anger, no defensiveness, no pride, just serious.
And his response to the direct questions about violating his vows, about being secretly married.
Simple, direct, unequivocal denial. I have never taken a wife, he stated. I have never broken my vow of celibacy.
Did they ask him why someone might do this? Try to discredit him so viciously?
They did. And interestingly, he didn't point fingers at personal enemies. Instead, he spoke about differing, sometimes conflicting visions of pastoral leadership within the church itself. Places where, as he apparently put it, compassion is sometimes seen as weakness or reform as betrayal.
That's quite a profound way to frame it.
It is. It suggests he saw this less as a personal attack and more as a symptom of deeper tensions or disagreements within the institution.
But his most striking statement, according to the reports, was about forgiveness.
Absolutely. He spoke of sadness, yes, but mostly for the church and for people whose faith might be shaken by this, not really for himself. And he explicitly said, anger is too heavy to carry and it never brings healing. He admitted feeling confusion and grief, but never hate. He stated clearly, "I have forgiven the author of that letter."
And he asked the commission to protect the church from something called the sin of silence. What did that mean?
It seems he meant protecting the church from letting internal divisions, conflicts, or injustices fester without being addressed openly and honestly. It was a call for transparency and courage, really.
So his testimony wasn't just a denial. It was something more.
Exactly. It was seen as a powerful witness to his character. One commission member apparently remarked afterwards, "He doesn't speak like a guilty man. He speaks like a servant who has suffered." It added this vital spiritual dimension that complemented the cold, hard facts of the forensic evidence. His grace under pressure was, in itself, compelling.
Did the investigation manage to uncover who was likely behind this sophisticated attack and what their motives might have been?
Yes, the digital forensics and some internal checks pointed towards ideological opposition. The evidence implicated a man named Antonio Silva, a former Vatican media technician. He apparently had connections to certain fringe Catholic groups known for opposing more progressive clergy members.
And the motive.
It seemed pretty clear the goal was to derail Cardinal Teigel's potential advancement within the church. He was often mentioned as Papa Bill, someone considered a potential future pope. This attack wasn't just about ruining one man's reputation. It looked like an attempt to, as Pope Leo XIV later put it, reshape the church's future by eliminating a candidate whose vision they opposed. It was, in the Pope's words, fear dressed in righteousness.
So with this mountain of evidence, the forgery confirmed, the alibi solid, Tagle's testimony compelling, and a likely motive identified, the final report goes to Pope Leo XIV. What was his decision?
Quiet but resolute. Full exoneration for Cardinal Teigel. But his instructions on how to handle the announcement were very specific and quite profound.
How so? What was his reasoning about naming the perpetrator?
He instructed his team, "We will name the truth. We will not name the liar." His reasoning, as reported, was this: the wound is not only in the crime, it is also in the temptation to retaliate. This is not a moment to punish, it is a moment to heal.
That's quite something. Moving beyond just justice to reconciliation.
Exactly. He recognized that publicly naming and shaming Silva, even if justified, could actually deepen the very divisions within the church that this attack represented. It was a call for unity over retribution.
Describe the scene when the official pronouncement was made. It happened in the council hall.
Yes, in the ornate council hall. Cardinal Rinaldi read out the commission's findings, detailing the digital alteration, the impossible timeline. Then Pope Leo XIV himself delivered this unequivocal declaration of Tagle's innocence. He said something like, "He has not broken his vows, he has not lived a double life, he has been slandered, and now he is vindicated."
Must have been an emotional moment.
Extremely. Sources describe an emotional embrace between the Pope and Cardinal Teigel afterwards. And Tagle himself then addressed the council, echoing his earlier sentiments.
What did he say?
He thanked the Pope and the Commission, not just for finding the truth, but for allowing it to speak louder than suspicion. And then he repeated his forgiveness. "I forgive the one who did this, not because I am better, but because I have been forgiven much. Let us be builders of bridges, not diggers of graves." Apparently, his humility and grace just filled the room.
So vindication within the Vatican walls.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the wider world? How did the aftermath play out?
It was complex. Reputable media outlets reported the full exoneration, the facts of the forgery. But as often happens, especially on social media, the narrative remained divided. Some people kept pushing the original conspiracy theories.
Which really highlights that challenge, doesn't it? Trying to correct misinformation once it's out there. The lie travels faster than the truth sometimes.
Absolutely. It's a constant battle in our information age. The initial scandal often gets more traction than the subsequent correction.
So how did Cardinal Teigel himself respond to this lingering division and misinformation?
Remarkably, he chose not to get bogged down in counter-arguments or online debates. Instead, he focused on witness through action and clear communication. In a Vatican media statement, he acknowledged that many heard the accusation before the truth. But he said, "I stand before you today not to argue, not to defend, but to share what this journey has taught me." He emphasized forgiveness being stronger than fear, truth being quiet but victorious, and faith rooted in Christ who brings light.
And his actions back this up.
Completely. He was seen visiting refugee centers soon after. He launched an initiative called Mission Mercy, sending missionaries to communities, including those potentially wounded or divided by such scandals, focusing on service and reconciliation rather than dwelling on the attack against him.
You mentioned earlier these letters of solidarity that came from all over the world. That must have been quite affirming.
Oh, absolutely fascinating. Messages poured in. A widow from Poland, a Protestant pastor in South Korea, even a 12-year-old boy in Brazil writing about how Tagle's response helped his own faith. A former priest wrote about finding hope in Tagle's grace. It really showed that his approach, truth delivered with humility and forgiveness, resonated deeply, far beyond the Catholic Church itself. It had this incredible ripple effect.
Did the Vatican implement any concrete changes after this whole ordeal? New guidelines, perhaps?
Yes, they did. New protocols were established stating that anonymous accusations against high-ranking clergy wouldn't be made public or acted upon without a minimum threshold of verifiable evidence, assessed by a trusted internal body first.
A kind of filter against malicious, unsubstantiated claims.
Exactly. And they also set up a new standing commission specifically to monitor and respond to misinformation and digital threats targeting the church. And guess who serves as a spiritual advisor to that commission?
Let me guess. Cardinal Teigel.
Cardinal Teigel. So this painful scandal ultimately spurred concrete changes. It led to a broader campaign they called Faith Renewed, focusing on transparency, accountability, but also mercy. There's a deeper awareness now, it seems, about managing internal division and protecting the church's integrity in the digital age.
So this whole deep dive, it really takes us from that shadowy, mysterious letter delivered by unseen hands through the incredibly detailed forensic work and culminates in Cardinal Teigel's unwavering grace and forgiveness. It's quite the narrative.
It really underscores that idea that truth eventually has momentum. It moves, it clears paths. As the saying goes, no lie can stand forever. The church was certainly wounded by this, but arguably emerged with, perhaps, renewed clarity and a stronger commitment to discernment and mercy.
What an incredible journey we've taken through this deep dive.
Right.
From that dark accusation to, really, a beacon of truth and forgiveness in the end. It really makes you think about the destructive power of lies, but also the enduring strength of integrity.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it does raise an important question for all of us, doesn't it? In a world just saturated with information where we're all prone to quick judgments, how do you, listening right now, discern truth from falsehood, especially when it involves figures or institutions you admire or perhaps distrust? How do we cultivate that kind of patience, that willingness to do the rigorous inquiry, and frankly, the courageous compassion that ultimately prevailed in this specific story? It's not always easy.
That is a powerful thought to sit with, isn't it? The whole ordeal of Cardinal Teigel, the celibacy scandal that wasn't, it teaches us that healing these kinds of scars requires more than just knowing the facts. It seems to require embracing forgiveness and maybe relentlessly living out truth, not just speaking it.